And so I'm Jay Coburn, the Chief Executive Officer of the Community Development Partnership. And I want to welcome you to, I believe this is our seventh in a series of regular get-togethers that we used to do in person. And now we get to, as we seem to get to do everything over video conference. We continue to work full speed ahead here at the CDP. There are now, of our staff of 16, there are now 7 to 8 of us working either part-time or full-time back at our offices. We're kind of fortunate that what was in my opinion, a great liability in our office spaces, and that we are very carved up and distributed throughout our space. And it doesn't lead to a very collaborative kind of environment, but in a global pandemic, it creates a very safe environment so that those of us who are here working out of the offices are able to work in our own individual office space with the doors closed and windows opened for ventilation, and using masks when we're in the common areas. But that, I think that's helped some of us who either who live in places where we don't have great internet connections, or just the nature of our work makes it easier, better for us to be in our office spaces. A couple other updates. So we're very kind of hard at work right now, starting to gear up for what will be our 4th Housing Institute. And we will be launching that a little bit later than we typically do. Typically, the Housing Institute is in October, and this year we're going to be beginning that in November. But it's going to be held using an online video platform as well. Andrea Aldana, who's our Director of Housing Advocacy, I think some of you know, has been out on family leave she and her partner welcomed a newborn son at the end of July. So Andrea comes back to the office as a working mom, or actually I shouldn't say back to the office, she comes back to work, but I think she'll be working from home largely at the end of October, and then we'll start gearing up the Housing Institute for the year. I think one of the things too that we've talked about in our regular get-togethers is the work we've been doing to support the 100 families who live in our affordable and community rental housing that we own and or manage. And we have been, with a great partnership with the Homeless Prevention Council, ensuring that our residents are connected with services as they may be experiencing economic distress. And I'm pleased to report that even with the ending of the additional federal unemployment benefits, and we had a lot of concerns about how that was going to affect many of our residents. And a lot of folks have gone back to work or are, have other sources of income. And so that our rent collections for the month of September are at about 85% here on the 16th of September. And so, I think that's pretty strong and pretty consistent where we've been in previous months. And so I think, for now, although I think we are concerned about what happens this winter, our families seem to be doing okay. And on that note too, I'll add that one of the unique housing communities that we manage is the Harbor Hill complex in the town of Provincetown. That is a first of its kind in the Commonwealth community housing that is geared for people who don't earn too much to qualify for traditional affordable housing. So it's for families at 80% of area median income and all the way up to 200%. And the town of Provincetown acquired a bankrupt timeshare property and has renovated it, hired us to manage it, and we've been doing a rent up over the last year as as units came online after being renovated. And I'm pleased to report that we'll be at 100% occupancy on that project starting in the end of next week. And if you're interested in learning more about that, we just launched a video that's available on our website and our Facebook page that features some of the residents of Harbor Hill and interviews that we put together. The video was done actually to kind of help the town of Provincetown at the town meeting that's coming up on Monday, secure some additional funding from town meeting voters to help assist with continued renovations of that project. But it's a really stories of three really great residents and community members of the town of Provincetown who now have a safe and secure and a place that they can afford and don't have to worry about it being sold out from under them or having to go from a summer rental to a winter rental because of the availability of that project. And then finally, we have welcomed a new staff member here at the CDP last week. So for the past year, we've been focused on expanding our property management and bringing new properties. We were fortunate to work with the head of our property management department, a guy by the name of David Abel, for a few years to get that kind of up and running. David was enticed to return to the condo management world that he came from. And so I made the decision to ask our chief financial officer, Rob Doan, to move over and take on that effort. And so to fill Rob's shoes as our CFO, we've welcomed a guy by the name of Ronnie Edwards. Ronnie and his wife, about a year and a half ago, moved into their kind of summer home in Yarmouthport. Both Ronnie and his wife are career foreign service officers who worked at the U.S. U.S. Agency for International Development for over 2 decades, working on behalf of all of us around the world, supporting efforts in the developing world to increase capacity and deal with challenges that many developing countries have. So Ronnie, in his capacity at U.S. Agency for International Development, was a controller and has a lot of experience with managing complex financial software and systems, and also working with nonprofits, particularly in the developing world, to comply with U.S. government standards around accounting and fiscal oversight. And so we're really excited to have Ronnie, who has been doing community development for a long time, but just around the world instead of here in the U.S., joining our staff. So that's kind of an update on some of the things that are going on here at the CDP in general. But the biggest news is a new initiative that my colleague Pam Anderson, our Director of Business and Credit Programs, is leading. We have Pam, and I think some of you have been on these calls before, have heard about the great work Pam's been doing to help small businesses in the region deal with the economic impact of the pandemic. Pam's been helping businesses evaluate and access different government programs, including the Payroll Protection Program and the SBA's Economic Injury and Disaster Loan product. But we definitely had a group of businesses for whom these programs weren't a great fit, and I'm pleased that we, working with some partners, including the town of Ture and the 7 other Lower Cape towns, were able to leverage about $400,000 in community development block grant funds to create a forgivable loan fund for businesses. And so Pam is going to talk a bit about that new program with us tonight. Pam.
All right. Thank you. Jason, can you give me approval to share my screen, please? There we go. All right, from the beginning, start. All right, so I was just going to start briefly to talk about, where businesses are now and where they were through the summer. The biggest problem that businesses had this summer on top of COVID was that they didn't have enough employees. Every business was short on help, and even though they had signs up all summer, they weren't able to find additional help for the summer. So they had shortened hours, they were closed a couple of days a week. Now, as we're going into the fall, their high school and college kids are leaving, and they even have a smaller workforce. So many of them are having to cut back their hours yet again, not necessarily because there aren't people here to serve, but because they don't have help to provide those, the services that they want to provide in the way that they want to. And there's a variety of reasons for that. But through all of the work that we've done in the past year, we worked with over 227 businesses on technical assistance last year. And a lot of that was around helping them identify ways that they needed to change their business based on COVID. We worked with over 50 businesses in the SBA relief programs to help them go and get the EIDL loan or a PPP loan, have them understand questions related to them. The EIDL portal is still open for another week or so. So any businesses that are finding now that they can go and get that loan to help them get through the winter, it is available until the 30th. As of the end of August, there were over $3 billion in EIDL loans to Massachusetts businesses. And for PPP loans, there were over $14 billion. So a lot of money has come into the state to help with COVID. When I was doing some research to talk with you about this earlier, I think on the PPP, Massachusetts is in the top 10 for number of dollars that have come here for PPP loans. But as Jay mentioned, we weren't able to help all of the businesses that need the assistance based on many different criteria that they had for those loans. And so with the Micro Enterprise Forgivable Loan Fund, we are able to help them. And this is an ad that we put together that we've run in the Provincetown Independent, and I've been using it for other marketing. The business owners that have 5 or fewer employees that are on the Lower and Outer Cape and meet the low to moderate income criteria of 80% of area median income, and can document losses that they've suffered related to COVID, which is as simple as comparing their numbers from one year to the next, can qualify for these forgivable loans. They're up to $10,000. And the forgiveness is easy. When they create the application, they tell us what they need to use the loan to pay for. And as long as that is an allowable purchase, then they just need to provide us with the invoices, and the loan is forgiven after they do that. They'll probably have about 6 months to be able to use those funds. But if they use them in a week, they can come back and get the forgiveness right away. There's no minimum amount of time that they have to keep it as a loan. And it'll be first come, first serve. So far, we have been taking pre-applications. And I just went to some training yesterday with the state. And as soon as we get the application finalized based on the changes and some clarifications that they provided in that training, we'll be able to roll it out to everybody. Let's see, we have the town of Ture is the applicant for the fund. So they are the town that we're going through, but it is available to businesses on all 8 of the Lower and Outer Cape towns. We have about $400,000 available, so we should be able to do at least 40 loans for 40 micro enterprises. It's unique though. Today I was talking with a couple of different people, and several of them said, well, I'm only going to ask for 7,000 because I want to make sure that there's enough for everybody, or people that need it more than I do. So that was an interesting comment that I got from people. They do need to have 5 or fewer employees at the time of application. So in some ways, the timing going into the fall helps more businesses potentially, because they may have had 6 employees in the summer if they were retail, but in the fall they only have 2. So it is at the time of application. To meet the low to moderate income criteria, they can use their 2019 tax return. And if they qualify with that, they don't have to do the huge verification process. If they didn't meet it with that, but their income has been drastically reduced in 2020, like so many have, they can qualify based on that, but they have to do the full income verification part of the program. And then we will look at their comparison year to year. Now, I'll take some questions in just a second, but I just wanted to share that if you find people that, or you know of anybody, business that's interested in this program, if they go to the capecdp.org and they click on the COVID page at the top, they can click this link and it takes them to the emergency resources. And right there, the click here is where they can get the pre-application. And once we have the full application available, we will replace this with that. Additionally, I've added the opportunity because I've gotten so many phone calls in a short period of time because there's a lot of businesses in need at the moment. I've added some links so that people can automatically make an appointment to speak with me in my calendar. I'm using a new app for that and it's working out really well. On Friday, I had 20 phone calls and 8 people made reservations for times to talk to me. So the other thing to add is that on the right above this section, I have a link so that people can get updates based on my monthly Inside Scoop, which is an e-newsletter that I send out every month to businesses. And we know that there's going to be other funding to help businesses down the road. We just don't know when or what the criteria for it's going to be. So I use that tool of the Inside Scoop to be able to share it with people so that they're able to learn more as we go along and take advantage of some of those other resources. There's just my short little introduction to the Inside Scoop for September that just went out the other day with a list of the different things that I've included in it to share with people. We've also been sharing information. The Cape Cod Commission and the Cape Cod Chamber have been doing a lot of work gathering information from business owners to be able to understand where the pandemic is taking us. So we've shared that with people to get more information. And Live Love Local did a nice job of a thing to encourage people to shop locally and the impacts of shopping locally and what they can do for the environment or our economy. Also, Live Love Local has a resiliency fund where they can have programs for small dollar amounts to help businesses with grants. The Cape Cod Chamber came out with some statistics just this week on how businesses have done through the month of August. And if you look at some of the information, like through August, this was all based on hotel occupancy. And for weekdays, the running 28-day total was 62% of hotels were occupied, and on weekends it was 81%. And August is usually the busiest month, so that's down about 15% based on hotel room nights. The restaurants and everybody, the restaurants are down, many of them even more because they have limited seating versus what they're used to in the past. And does anybody have questions related to the block grant information? No? All right. Well, I just have a couple more things about all the programs that we do. We also have our microloan program that we've been running for 25 years. In 2020, we lent almost $100,000 to 6 borrowers. And we did have 2 more borrowers that had been approved for loans earlier in the spring, but both of them, based on COVID, decided not to take the loan at that time, and they were pivoting their business in a different way. Since 1995, we have lent over $3.6 million to 223 businesses across the Lower and Outer Cape. And this fall, we have a number of workshops that we're working on too. I'm working with SCORE on one that's called Plan B, and a lot of businesses pivoted for the summer to figure out a new way to operate. And now they're going to have to do that again for the fall. So they can look at what they did, the changes that they made. Are they meeting their expectations, or do they need to make another pivot, or do they need more information to change to another way? We'll have QuickBooks Online. We're working on a series of 3 marketing workshops. We're going to title them the Digital Pivot Series. We're going to talk about MailChimp because that's a low-cost email client for or email service for people, how to do your website, and other different digital tools that can help businesses at this time. We're also running the Cape and Islands Green program a couple of weeks after the Net Zero Energy Conference. We're working with We Can on the GROW program. We're going to run 2 sessions, November through April. They meet once a month to help people grow their businesses. And we have 3 info sessions coming up in the next few weeks for that. And finally, also with We Can, we have monthly legal consults. So if people have legal questions, they can contact an attorney and they get a half-hour consultation to answer some of their questions. And we're also working on a few, over the course of the winter, a couple of legal workshops. Oh, Jay, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Pam. And I think Pam would be happy to take questions about her presentation, but also just from what she's hearing from small businesses in general. Pam, one of the questions that I wanted to ask you is, many of the small businesses, particularly in the hospitality sectors, stay open in the winter, and do so knowing that they're going to lose money, but it's part of their strategy to retain good employees is to be able to have year-round jobs, and so that they, that's part of the business plan, and that they have successful enough summer seasons that they can afford to lose $50,000 or $100,000 by staying open all winter. I'm hearing a lot of businesses who are traditionally open year-round are reevaluating that, even though we are hearing about the likelihood of there being a lot more people here this winter as folks continue to be able to work remotely from their homes here on Cape Cod. Just wondering kind of what you're hearing and actually talking to businesses about what the prospects are for being, how people are feeling about the winter.
Well, I know a couple of them that I think that people that are on the water always draw, clients all the time. So I know of a couple of them that haven't been open the winter before and actually are going to be open in the winter this year because of that, come get away, you're at the waterfront. But I still think that the biggest problem for a lot of them, like the people that you're talking to, do they have enough employees to be able to do that? They still don't have any H-2Bs that they could carry over into the winter. And I know I feel terrible for so many of these businesses that had to close days during the summer because they didn't have enough staff to be able to stay open. So I don't have a lot of feedback from people on that yet. I know that a lot of them are looking at everything around what they're going to do in the fall.
Any other questions or comments from folks? Pam?
I mean, I know I live down the road from Arnold's. Have you ever heard of Arnold's being closed 2 days in the summer? Never.
Yeah.
That's like the epitome of this is not a normal year.
Right. Very much so.
Pam?
Steve?
Yes.
You said you had about 40, a maximum of about 40 loans available. What's the demand out there? I'm just curious. How much demand is demand going to overshoot the supply?
Yes. It's a minimum of 40 because we have 400,000 and there's 10,000 each. So if people all took 7,000, I'd be able to do even more. But so far with our pre-application, I think Jason looked earlier today, we had 55 pre-applications.
Ooh, ouch. That's a lot of need.
Yes. And, I hear the whole gamut of people that, you know, a lot of people are telling me that their sales are off by 50%. And so they're doing everything they can to change how they're doing business to compensate for that. And this will help them get through the winter, or, you know, get their rent caught up, or many different ways. I mean, I think the biggest one that I hear people talking about how they want to use the money is to pay their rent.
Wow. And I presume if some people don't get this money, they're toast.
Quite possibly. A lot of them are used to going into the winter and figuring out how to make it through the winter. But we're in a different place, so there'll be more closing than we've had in the past.
Right. Thank you.
We've also been, you know, continue to work with our partners at the state around additional funding programs. Yesterday, a couple of our board members and I had the opportunity to meet with Senator Sear and Representative Peake and Representative Whalen. And one of the things that we focused on was the economic development bill that is currently in the legislature in the conference committee between the two chambers. And that bill, both the House and Senate versions, contain some really good programs totaling somewhere between $75 and $80 million in loan and grant programs that would be administered by at the state level by the Mass Growth Capital Corporation. And so that might be an additional resource that, you know, if we run out of funds through this current program, that we may be able to go there. I think there's also talk in the Congress, and it probably really depends on what happens in November, but I think there's talk about perhaps reopening PPP, or having a second round, or additional resources coming from the federal government as well. And we'll,
I wish,
you know, continue to be on top of that so that we can make sure that our businesses can access those as they come available.
yeah, I'm hoping that they'll sooner than later come up with that proposed legislation where they would forgive all the PPP loans below $150,000 that had been proposed, because currently most of the banks are not taking the forgiveness applications, because they're hoping for that too, because that will reduce their workload and the individual business owners' workload to prove where they use those funds. Fran.
Pam, it's just so impressive, your presentation and the number of programs that you presented, and you went through them so fast. It was like bing to bing bing. But what I'm wondering is, you also in other years have had a lot of programs. Would you just talk a little bit about what your role, your work, your involvement, how it's been different this year? Have you been able to absorb all of this?
Yes, but I've also been getting help from Jason. Jason has been providing me with a lot of administrative support and creating, you know, a lot of the pieces that I've done them all myself, from my newsletters to e-blasts and things, but Jason's been able to help me with that. He even sends out emails for me sometimes to big groups so that, you know, I can work on working with the clients as opposed to reaching out to everybody. And so I've even been having him help with data collection and things like that to help me be able to handle the additional workload of the forgivable loan fund. And, you know, right now we've been working and working and working to this point, and we're right on the edge of go. So when we hit go, I might have a larger answer for you.
Well, it's pretty impressive, I have to say.
Well, and every year it changes a little bit based on needs. You know, sometimes we have a really banner year with workshops and there's a lot of follow-up for people, you know, along those lines. Other years we do a lot of loans, and it just sort of varies every year. But by having all of those different programs, it helps us flex and be able to pivot and provide people what they need when the time comes. And the other thing I just thought of, last year, I spent a lot of time doing office hours regionally at different places who had co-working space. Well, we're not doing that this year. So, now I have time that I was doing that I can apply to this. So, that change is, COVID took that away, but gave us something else to replace it with.
Interesting.
As we prepared our budget this year, we were definitely facing some a deficit that needed to be managed, and we wiped out close to $75,000 in the budget of staff mileage reimbursement for travel, refreshments at events and workshops, renting meeting venues. Since we are now doing everything online, I typically would be in Hyannis 1 or 2 days a week for a meeting of some sort. Pam was driving to different office hours. And now I think a lot more people that we work with are comfortable using a video platform. I think we're finding actually ourselves being even more productive, and also saving on expenses that we would have incurred. Which is not to say that there isn't a substitute at times for being able to sit across the desk from a small business client.
Yep.
Work with them, and Pam is particularly adept at doing that and really making business people feel comfortable. And so I think when the world does go back to some degree of normalcy, we'll continue to do video, but I think we'll also welcome the opportunity to do one-on-one meetings and small group meetings as well.
Yes. And, the one area where the video has really been helpful is helping people with their QuickBooks, because when we can do screen share, one of us can move the screen and the other one can see it. And it's almost better than in person, only because you're not both trying to cram over the same screen. You're both looking at your own, and you can still see what's going on. And it's a good teaching tool for that. But at the very beginning of COVID, I was learning all kinds of different tools and trying to teach people over the phone how to use Zoom.
Any other questions? Pam, or sorry, Jake, please.
Yeah, first, I just want to, thank you guys for creating this program. I just think it's so incredibly important. I guess I was just kind of thinking ahead and wondering maybe how you might evaluate the success of this program moving forward, and how you might use that evaluation maybe in future programs or projects.
Sure. So we have a pretty robust evaluation mechanism for all of our small business support. So Pam, do you want to talk a little bit about kind of what we track and what we're able to report on to our funders each year?
Okay, so we track a lot of things, but we have an intake form that we use with each client. And it gives us all of the statistical data related to that client to be able to report out to our funders. We also track how many individual businesses we work with and how much time we spent with them. And for businesses that we spend, in-depth time with, we also, the businesses set goals at the beginning of the year on the beginning of the time we work with them on what we're going to be working on, and then they evaluate how they did versus their goals at the end. We also use that tool for workshops, so that when people finish a workshop, we're asking them, what are your next steps and what are you going to implement when you get back to your business? And then when do you want us to check back with you on how you're doing on that? And we use those tools to report out as well. We use Salesforce to do our tracking, and we have some modules that we have created individually for the CDP in order to do that.
Thank you. So Jake, for those of you who don't know Jake, I'm meeting Jake tonight for the first time. He's our new program officer at the Sailors Snug Harbor of Boston Foundation.
I actually don't work with Sailor Snug.
Oh, you don't?
No, so I believe Gracia Sullivan might be taking over that.
It's going to take over
position.
GMA Foundations administers a number of smaller family foundations in New England, and for years as an agency administered the Sailor Snug Harbor, and they for a long time, at one time supported our small business fisheries projects, and then a few years ago kind of shifted their focus to help fund our housing rehabilitation loan program, which helps a lot of seniors stay in their homes by through a forgivable loan program paying for renovations on their homes. Alan.
Yeah, Jay and Pam, here we are in the middle of September. It looks like part of the business world is going to continue on here longer than it has in the past. And I have a habit whenever I walk into a store, which isn't very often now, I always ask the owner, how are things going? And it's interesting. In some cases, there are certain businesses that have done better this year than they have ever done before. Hardware store, building supply, things like that are up. A lot of retailers are down, part because they can't get supplies, and so they're hurting. I know in the hotel business, they were shut down in the spring. They opened, and I know one reasonably well. They opened, and they were booked 100%, but they had to turn people away because they couldn't get the employees.
Right.
The service, and they've sort of played this slow down all summer long. But the people that have been there have spent their money nicely. It's going to be interesting to see how this plays out. I suspect if you own a gas station, your gross is down. Since March, I've been to gas station twice to put gas in my car. That tells us something. If you're in the boat business, some of them have done very well. You could not buy a boat.
Yep.
Recently because everybody bought them. And if you study nationally, watch out where you go because there are a hell of a lot of people that don't know where they're going or how they're driving or what. It's like somebody calling over to you, say, I've got a traffic map here. Can you tell me how to get to Plymouth on my boat? That kind of thing. So it's going to be interesting to watch what businesses survive. And early on, you mentioned that people gamble. They know that they may have 3 or 4 months of costs exceeding revenues. And one person who's done this for a lot of years said he was excited by the end of August, he had paid off his short-term loan that carried him over through the 4 or 5 months in the winter and the extra month in the spring. So I hope as you sort of examine this, you begin to pick off the parts of our economy that are going to survive, and let's understand that there are going to be some that are not going to survive. And I know as you look at loans and other things, I'm sure you have to look at that because there's nothing worse than providing a loan to something that you know will never be paid back.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be part, yes, you're giving a lot of money away, but you are a banker in this case, and you're in the business of recycling that money when it happens. So I think, hotel business is going to be down. I track, because of the way we're financing some things here in Orleans, the short-term rental business. And I was very surprised that when the numbers came in for March, April, and May, where things were shut down, the hotel revenues were down about 30%. The short-term rental business was larger than it had ever been in that quarter.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm anxiously awaiting to now get the breakdown in September. Communities will be able to get the breakdown from short-term rental tax revenue and hotel motel revenue. And it's going to be very interesting to track this because I think what we're going to discover is, and some of your statistics showed, occupancy is down, what Wendy had provided for you.
Yep.
But I think you're going to find that the short-term rental business has actually been up considerably. I had a number of friends who rented When things were shut down, they had people with reservations for the summer every week booked. They lost everybody. And when Governor opened it up again, they were rebooked within 24 hours, 100%.
Right.
Some of them have told me that actually people are beginning to stay longer now. So there are going to be changes in this economy, and we should track them to understand where it's going to take us.
Yeah, along with that, at the beginning of the summer when things opened back up, some of the short-term rental organizations were canceling really short-term rentals of a day or two to take on longer weekly or monthly ones. So yeah, it's going to be an interesting year to see where all of this is going to take us.
So I'm gonna not work Pam all night because she's got a whole bunch of businesses to work with and talk to you tomorrow. So Pam, thank you so much for your presentation, but more importantly, thank you for the great work that you've been doing to help the businesses in our community weather these storms. And I also want to thank Britt and Jason for helping to organize and put together our Zoom meeting. We'll be doing another one of these in October. Topic hasn't been figured out yet, but I hope you'll to see you come back, and please feel free to invite friends. It's a great way for people to learn more about the CDP, to easily participate in one of these. We'll learn about the work that we're doing. So with that, I wish you all a great night, and we'll see you next month. And thanks for your continued interest and support in the work that we do here.
Thanks everyone for coming.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Much.